That is the question surrounding the Sister Wives universe tonight. Because while Kody and Robyn are rushing to hold on to their faltering assets, Meri's low-key chunk of real estate just became worth a fortune. And here is the catch: guess who is paying for it? Spoiler, not Meri. Annuals have seen Meri fight in the background, pushed into smaller and smaller roles both in the family and the business empire. She was the one excluded from the grand mansions, the lavish plots, the so-called family pot that incessantly benefited Kody and Robyn. Recall the excruciating scenes where Meri pleaded for a mere opportunity to invest in Coyote Pass, only to be rejected. Those clips landed hard because they showed you exactly where she was by herself, but yet still dedicated. But what if I was to tell you that the very land Kody used to minimize as not worth much has turned out to be the family's most prized possession? And what if I told you the court's most recent decisions mean that the other wives, and even TLC itself, could be required to pay for that explosive valuation? As per secret documents leaked from financial reports, Meri's plot has increased almost 300% in value since 2019, and due to the complicated network of loans, shared accounts, and family arrangements, the aftermath of that growth isn't straightforward. In fact, the judge's ruling all but ensures Meri's property is going to be both her highest achievement and the Browns' most costly nightmare. This isn't merely about land, it's about power, payback, and poetic justice. The very woman who was silenced is suddenly sitting on the golden ticket. And every move Kody and Robyn make to fight back only makes them look more desperate. But here's the twist. Meri didn't even plan for this to happen. The boom in value was sparked by external forces, new zoning laws, infrastructure development, and a sudden wave of real estate speculation in Flagstaff. But instead of partying, the remaining Browns are freaking out. Why? Because someone needs to cover the taxes, the adjustments, the refinancing penalties, and the surprise expenses that come with that stratospheric appraisal. And all indicators point to Kody and Robyn bearing the brunt of the expense. This is just the tip of the iceberg. In the second installment, we'll explore exactly how Meri's forgotten property instantly became the crown jewel, and why the court has decided that the family, not Meri, has to take the financial hit. But before we delve deeper, don't forget, this story continues to develop. Don't miss the next explosive twist when you subscribe, because the records I've revealed completely flip everything we've ever believed about the Browns' trail of cash. So how did Meri transition from being the wife with nothing left to becoming the owner of the one asset everyone now wants a share of? The key is in a paper trail that the family secretly hoped nobody would ever piece together. Court documents indicate that when the Browns initially bought their Flagstaff parcels of land, Meri was awarded what Kody referred to as a smaller, symbolic portion. He rationalized it then by explaining she didn't need as much, since she was essentially on her own. Fans recall that uncomfortable exchange because it wasn't merely about property. It was about respect, or the absence thereof. Below is what Kody never expected. That same plot of land is now 3 times more valuable than when it was first purchased. Why? Due to a city rezoning law approved last year. What was initially zoned low-value residential is now zoned for mixed commercial development. In simple language, the market erupted around it, and Meri's little patch of soil is prime property now. The leaked appraisal reports place the present worth at close to $1.2 million. That is higher than the total value of 2 of Robyn's properties, and substantially higher than what Christine ever received from the transaction when she departed. However, here is where things get complicated. Hidden within the family financial contracts is a provision linking Meri's plot of land with so-called family pot. That pot, recall, is the fund Kody said all the wives contributed to, and which TLC allegedly restocked by paying production fees. Under that provision, any appreciation in property value wasn't to accrue only to the owner. Rather, it was to be considered a family asset. Sounds reasonable, does not it? Not when you understand what that entails legally. It means that all the expenses on the property payback, the escalating taxes, the reassessment charges, even the capital gains vulnerability, are to be shared among the family members' collective accounts. That is, everyone chips in for Meri's victory, and the judge just decided that the clause is still active. Meri is not paying the runaway expenses alone. Kody and Robyn, the household account holders, are legally responsible for paying most of it. That is correct. The same individuals who cut Meri out of their inner circle are now forced to pay for the bill of her success. Fans are referring to it as karmic justice. Legal analysts are referring to it as unprecedented. TLC is labeling it a possible nightmare, as the same documents reveal production funds flowed through the pot as well, which leaves us wondering, did TLC merely get stuck paying for Meri's escalating land? And here is where the drama turns from personal deceit to outright financial scandal. Because when you trace the numbers, the photograph becomes even grimmer. When word of Meri's real estate spike reached the courtroom, Robyn wasted no time trying to cover herself. Robyn's lawyers quickly moved to assert that her $1.5 million estate must be deemed separate and distinct from the family's combined financial responsibilities. Her argument, that she and Kody had assumed special burdens to preserve the family's reputation, and thus their property should be exempt from any redistribution in the event of Meri's land. That is, Meri gets her win, but don't make us pay for it. The issue, the judge wasn't a bit convinced. Indeed, the court went so far as to label Robyn's argument unsupported by precedent and inconsistent with the family's own written agreements. The court noted that Robyn herself had put her name to the original pot clause, the very clause being used to bring her to book now, and then came the shocker sentence. The judge penned, "It is not for one member of the family to reap the benefits of collective labor while disclaiming responsibility for its obligations." Those words have been repeated and repeated throughout fan sites, because in one fell swoop, the court upheld what audiences have maintained for years. Robyn desires the benefits without the responsibility. But the reaction didn't end there. After Robyn's exemption was revoked, the court directed a complete analysis of the family's financial framework that includes all property, all loans, and all TLC checks that go into the family pot now come under the microscope. And the initial results are disastrous. One insider told of an atmosphere of tension and humiliation in the courtroom, with Robyn visibly upset and Kody becoming more and more irate. At one stage whispering angrily to his attorneys while Meri sat glumly, not even looking in their direction for once. The dynamic had been reversed, and the fans picked up on it. On Twitter, the response was immediate. This is Meri's redemption arc. Kody finally gets to pay for ignoring her. Robyn's mansion needs to be first up on the auction block. Here is the bit that hasn't been largely covered. The judge made a very direct warning. If the Browns don't go along with the order of distribution, the court can appoint a receiver, an impartial third party, who would take possession of the assets of the family and sell them off to pay for bills. That is not only humiliating, it is devastating, because once a receiver is appointed, Kody and Robyn no longer get to choose what is sold and when. For short, they'd be watching while their empire falls apart. The instant the judge intimated receivership, Kody realized the walls were closing in, and rather than confront Meri head-on or agree to the court's conditions, he attempted a backdoor maneuver that left even his own attorneys agog. According to documents, Kody contacted TLC's lawyers through his lawyers, effectively begging the network to intervene and assist with defraying the runaway expenses attached to Meri's real estate. His reasoning, that the land in dispute belonged to the show, is ecosystem, and thus an expense related to production. You heard that correctly. Kody did actually attempt to pass along Meri's exorbitant property taxes as TLC's issue. The reaction of the network's legal department was quick and merciless. TLC's attorneys, on the record, said they had no fiscal responsibility for the personal debts of the Brown family, and that any efforts to identify real estate as an expense of a show were absolutely false. That letter, read into the court record subsequently, might be remembered as one of the most embarrassing moments of Kody's financial demise. Not only did it reveal his desperation, it also drew TLC into a narrative they didn't want to be a part of. One source called the exchange an open door to contract renegotiations. That is, TLC now has bargaining power to cut expenses or even shrink payments to the Browns in the future. And Meri, she kept quiet. Not a peep, not even a comment. Supporters are labeling her silence powerful. As for once, Kody and Robyn were pleading while she had all the leverage behind the scenes. However, sources claim Meri is quietly lining up her own legal strikeback. Meri has reportedly gathered evidence that demonstrates she attempted for years to purchase a piece of the bigger Coyote Pass parcels, but was shut down and shut out. That proof, if presented, would demonstrate that Kody and Robyn systematically sideline her financially, something that the court takes it very seriously in joint assets cases, and it doesn't end there. If Meri's attorneys are able to demonstrate that production funds were channeled through the family pool and allocated to benefit Robyn in an uneven manner, the consequences could involve breach of fiduciary duty claims. That is legalese for, you made bad decisions on shared money for your own benefit. Read that headline, Kody and Robyn guilty of spending TLC money mischievously. It is no surprise Kody was panicked when he left the courthouse that day. Witnesses said he was pale, flustered, and snapping at reporters with short, evasive answers. But things get really fiery from here on out. A sealed motion filed only last week, one that the court has not yet ruled on, may decide if Robyn's mansion is offered as collateral. If it is granted, it means the very house she held on to as safe might be the first to go. For years, Robyn's $1.5 million Flagstaff mansion has been her crown jewel. It was the house she claimed she needed for her young children, the one she bragged about as evidence that her efforts for the family had been rewarded. But thanks to the most recent filings, that dream house could now be on the auction block. Here is how it went down. When the court declared that the family pot remained legally enforceable, Meri's attorneys made a motion that the mansion of Robyn be used as collateral against outstanding debts. The logic was straightforward. Because Robyn gained the most out of the pot, her biggest asset should be offered up first to pay the debt. The judge did not rule right away, but at a dramatic hearing, a sentence buried in the transcript left viewers in shock. Quoting Robyn's defense, the judge declared, "If one member demands disproportionate benefit, it is only just that disproportionate burden follow." That remark shook the gallery to its core. For the first time, it was obvious the court was considering pushing Robyn's mansion into the game. The response on Twitter was instant. Robyn's safe house isn't so safe anymore. That judge's quote says it all, picturing her face if the mansion that she boasted about is the first to go. But the legal stakes go even deeper. If the motion passes, Robyn's mansion would be valued and potentially sold to pay not only property tax expenses, but also penalties related to misspent production money. That translates to her forever home being sold off to strangers, with her having nothing to show for the years she took to centralize Kody's assets around herself. In private, sources say Kody is fuming. He allegedly stormed out of the courthouse after the hearing, blaming Meri for ruining the family's life. But legally, Meri hasn't lifted a finger. Undefined, she's letting the system do the work, quietly sitting back while the judge and lawyers connect the dots. Kody never thought anyone would. And Robyn, she wept tears reading it, holding her documents in hand and whispering, "This isn't fair." But others watched at home and were quick to call out the irony. Christine, Janelle, and Meri herself have all uttered those very words in previous seasons and been shrugged off by Kody. Karma comes back around, and in this instance, the mansion may be karma's cost. When Kody initially subdivided land in Flagstaff, he indicated that Meri's portion was less an investment than a consolation prize. Fans recall the awkward family sit-down, Kody discussing fairness with Meri's tension-filled smile lingering on camera. What he never actually said, but what everybody knew, was that Meri's plot was deemed unimportant. At the time, the property was valued at less than $300,000. Too small to expand, too remote from the core development, and too inexpertly zoned to appeal to serious buyers. Kody even went so far as to intimate that Meri might someday trade up. If the family fund permitted, of course. That trade-up never materialized. But here is the surprise. The same characteristics that made the land appear worthless in 2019 became its greatest assets in 2023. First, the city passed a significant rezoning ordinance to invite external investment. Overnight, small sites previously zoned residential only were reclassified for mixed commercial use. That meant Meri's lot was now permitted to have businesses, short-term rentals, or even multi-family dwellings. In a college town like Flagstaff, that sort of flexibility is worth gold. Secondly, a new infrastructure project flipped the script on everything. An expansion of the highway made it easier to get to Meri's lot, cutting down travel time into downtown by almost 15 minutes. Developers swooped in right away, driving property values through the roof in the area. By the time new appraisals were published, Meri's lot was up almost 300% in value, at an estimated $1.2 million. What used to be considered worthless is now the type of property people compete over. Fans can't help but notice here is the irony. If Kody had stood up for Meri years ago, if he'd assisted her in expanding or investing, he could have been basking in the family's most valuable asset. Instead, his arrogant behavior not only lost him the prize, but also trapped him into paying for its appreciation in value. On Reddit, one fan put it best. Kody's hubris made Meri's land a goldmine, and now he has to pay for it. That is karma with interest. Meanwhile, Meri isn't gloating. She is keeping it cool, not even talking about the property publicly. Insiders describe her silence as strategic. She realizes the less she speaks, the stronger the court records and increasing figures speak for themselves. But the larger tale here isn't merely Meri's victory. It is the way Meri's worthless parcel revealed the Browns' entire financial framework. For once its worth increased, every technical deficiency in Kody and Robyn's accounting was placed under the microscope. Meri's land appreciation didn't just enhance her position, it revealed a paper trail that detectives couldn't ignore. When the court required current financial disclosures, accountants started digging through years of bank statements associated with so-called family pot. What they uncovered stunned even the most experienced analysts. Transfers. Plenty of them. Some trivial, some huge, and most importantly, nearly all of them were aimed in one direction: Robyn. A single highlighted document revealed a $75,000 payment from a joint production account to an individual trust created in Robyn's name. The memo line was blank except for household upgrades. Another payment for $42,000 was labeled school fees, but did not correspond with the tuition fees of any of the Brown children attending schools in Flagstaff. A pattern developed over time: shared money, funds that were meant to pay for taxes, law bills, and shared belongings, was being diverted into individual expenditures for Kody and Robyn. Christine and Janelle had simply dropped out, silently, leaving Meri as the sole other legal member. That left her assets still linked to a pot she'd lost confidence in years earlier. But here's where the judge intervened with a stern rebuke. In its judgment, the court wrote, "Evidence indicates a specific intent of some parties to divert collective resources for personal benefit." That is lawyer jargon for unjust enrichment, a high-stakes claim that can lead to penalties, restitution by force, and in severe instances, criminal referral. To followers, the news came like a thunderbolt. Social media exploded with commentary. Robyn essentially used the family fund like her own Venmo. No wonder Christine pocketed the dough. She knew this was going to happen. Meri's silence is indeed golden. She is allowing the receipts to speak for themselves. However, the most incriminating piece of information wasn't a transfer. It was a timeline. Analysts realized that the largest withdrawals occurred in the lead-up, months before Meri's property appraisal surge. That is, while Kody and Robyn were in effect writing off her land as not important, they were quietly siphoning the account that was designed to protect her from financial loss. That inconsistency didn't escape the notice of the court, and it put the stage for the next shocking bombshell: a forensic audit request. Yes, the judge formally ordered a complete forensic audit of all Brown family accounts from the past 5 years. That is, all deposits, transfers, and payments by TLC are now being traced. If the audit detects misrepresentation, Kody and Robyn might not only get financial penalties but also be accused of fraud. When a forensic audit was ordered by the judge, the courtroom atmosphere changed immediately. A gasp swept the room because everybody understood what that implied. No more secrets, no more fudge, no more lies. Forensic audits don't mess around. They're not normal reviews. They get deep checking every deposit, transfer, and even cash withdrawal against tax returns and production contracts. And in this instance, the court hired an outside company with no connection to the Browns or TLC, neutral, independent, and tenacious. Within weeks, leaks began to seep out, and what they showed put fans into a dither. The first leak was a $120,000 transfer that was described as production reimbursement. But TLC accountants verified no such reimbursement had been approved. Where did that cash end up? The audit followed it back into an account associated with Robyn's credit cards. Another suspicious entry revealed a monthly recurring payment of $4,500 labeled as consulting fees. The catch? No consultant was ever hired. Instead, the payments were attached to a shell company that was listed in Robyn's name. But the most shocking revelation was the auditor's initial report. Hidden in a 17-page report, there was one line that jumped out. There is substantial evidence of funds diverted from collective accounts to subsidize individual lifestyle expenses. Immediately, fans pounced on the words, "subsidize individual lifestyle." On Reddit, the comment sections erupted. Translation: Robyn's shopping sprees were funded on TLC money. They thought no one would ever examine this closely. This is the fraud Christine and Janelle hinted at for years. And here's the kicker. If the audit substantiates these diversions, the court can order restitution. That means Robyn could be required to repay hundreds of thousands of dollars, funds that she doesn't seem to possess. The most glaring asset, her mansion. Legal experts are already talking about how the house might be seized or auctioned off to meet the restitution order. That is exactly why Meri's attorneys insisted on having it identified as collateral. And according to how the judge worded the final hearing, it appears the court concurs too. In the meantime, Meri has remained silent. She has not gloated, has not defended herself, has not tweeted obscure social media quotes like Christine used to do. She is doing something much stronger instead. She is letting the audit speak for itself, and it is succeeding. Fans who once wrote her off as the quiet wife now regard her as the ultimate comeback tale, the lady who remained quiet long enough for reality to finally catch up with Kody and Robyn. But here is the turn of events that everyone did not anticipate. The audit uncovered more than just financial mishandling. It also revealed a hidden account, a shadow pot Kody never informed the wives of. If the forensic audit was a storm, the revelation of the shadow account was the lightning bolt. Deep within the audit is reports. Detectives found an account that wasn't reported in any of the Browns' documents. Not to the wives, not to the network TLC. Not even in sworn financial disclosures made by Kody. This was money in plain sight, stashed under the name of some obscure little LLC that nobody had ever heard of. The balance? More than $430,000. The transactions were revealing. Deposits coincided almost perfectly with the date TLC paid lump. Some advances on new seasons. Most of the cash went into the family pot, but a bit was quietly skimmed off and swept into this account. For years, no one was paying attention, until the audit required cross-checks with network disbursements. The worst part? The withdrawals from the account coincided with the down payment schedule for Robyn's home. That is to say, Kody and Robyn had been informing the wives that TLC paid for the house legally when in fact it was paid from money skimmed off behind their backs. The judge's reaction, as reported by leaked transcripts, was glacial. This account constitutes a material omission. The court will not accept hidden assets. Fans responded immediately on the internet. One Twitter thread was, "So Kody was crying poor while he was sitting on almost $500,000. Every time he said to Christine or Janelle that there was nothing left, he was a liar." Meri's silence is just the loudest mic drop ever in Sister Wives history. And here is where things get worse for Kody, because what this was not about was hiding money. This was about perjury. By not reporting the account in affidavits, Kody potentially crossed over from civil responsibility to possible criminal risk. The court hasn't yet declared a referral, but legal commentators are already openly speculating Robyn's stance. Even weaker. Because her name was listed on multiple withdrawals, she can't disassociate herself. The shadow account wasn't only Kody's, it was theirs. In the meantime, Meri's property value continues to rise. Each new valuation increases the pressure, since the more it grows, the greater the financial burdens attached to the family pot. And with Kody's secret stash exposed, the court now has the power to redirect those hidden funds straight into covering the costs. Imagine that irony. The very money Kody tried to hide may now pay the taxes on the land he once dismissed as worthless. By the time the shadow account was exposed, the courtroom was buzzing with tension. Lawyers shuffled documents, journalists jotted down notes, and supporters in the public gallery leaned forward in stunned silence. Everyone had expected the day to be dramatic, but no one anticipated what followed. The judge began by recapping the audit's conclusions: funds diverted, assets hidden, and years of false disclosures. Then, speaking directly to Kody, the judge asked, "Do you deny any knowledge of this account?" For an instant, Kody remained silent. He glanced at his lawyers, then at Robyn, who was pale and glassy-eyed. And finally, he said, I don't remember taking part in those deals." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers, even a couple of snickers from the gallery. Everyone knew what that implied. Kody was attempting to play the "I don't remember" card, something judges dislike. Meri sat silently in the second row, her expression not readable. She did not smirk, did not roll her eyes, did not even move in her seat. That silence was deafening. It was the silence of someone who had been belittled for years. Now, seeing the truth vindicate itself, then came the explosion. When Meri's lawyer showed the withdrawal slips with Kody's electronic signature on them, Kody lost it. Slamming his hand on the table, he yelled, "This is a witch hunt! You are all out to kill me!" The judge's gavel cracked against the bench. "Mr. Brown, this court will not abide by theatrics. If you cannot calm down, sanctions will ensue." Sanctions, that single word sent waves through the courthouse. Sanctions might imply fines, contempt of court, or even a shift of control of the family's property to a receiver appointed by the court. To a man who was consumed by control, it was the final threat. Robyn, her face white with shock, leaned toward him, speaking desperately in a whisper. Witnesses described her as on the brink of crying, grasping the table like it was her only anchor. Meri's lawyer spoke quietly meanwhile, delivering the line that fans continue to repeat online. For years, our client was told she had nothing. Now we can see who had it all. That remark was a hammer blow. The hearing concluded with the judge making a date for a final ruling on sanctions and restitution. Undefined, but the writing was already there. Kody's empire was slipping away from him, and Meri didn't have to raise a single one of her own hands to see it happen. When the judge threatened sanctions, the Brown family allegedly went into tailspin. One word was all it took, and it weighed incredibly heavily, for it meant that the court was no longer merely checking figures, but promising to punish actions. According to sources, Kody walked around the Flagstaff mansion for hours that evening, raging about being set up and threatening that he'd never allow outsiders to get their hands on his cash. Robyn, on the other hand, barricaded herself in the bedroom, angrily texting and phoning up friends for guidance. On one of them, leaked out afterwards to fans, she wrote, "We can't lose everything over this. He has to calm down before he ruins what is left." But calming down was not Kody's way. Within 24 hours, his lawyers began scrambling, making desperate motions to postpone the sanctions hearing. They contended the shadow account was a misinterpretation of family finances, claiming it was utilized solely to protect the children's future. Fans weren't having it. On Facebook and Reddit, Sister Wives viewers dismantled the alibi. One viral post put it into words: "If it was for the kids, why sneak it past Meri, Christine, and Janelle? Why leave them broke while Robyn stayed in a mansion?" Meanwhile, rumors circulated that Kody and Robyn were quietly moving funds into other names, perhaps even family members or LLCs, in order to avoid seizure. If so, that might blow up in their faces, as courts view such activity as proof of fraud. But the best indicator of panic was observed on a late-night drive. Neighbors reported spotting Kody packing boxes into his truck and driving off to a storage unit. What was inside those boxes? Financial records, jewelry. Something he didn't want Meri's attorneys to discover. No one can say for certain, but the timing raised suspicions. Along the way, Meri remained serene. Sources indicate she sat at home in her own residence drinking tea and responding to sympathy texts from family and friends. She didn't need to panic. The court was ultimately in her favor, and every last-ditch effort Kody attempted only worked further to her advantage. By the end of the week, the media had their story: Meri the patient survivor, Kody the fraying patriarch, and Robyn the desperate partner trapped in between. The photo lingered, and public sympathy for Meri through the roof, along with her property value. But the next leak, one email from an insider in the Brown family, would flip the whole case into treacherous new terrain. Just when it looked like the sanctions hearing would be the culmination, a new leak rewrote the story. A mysterious email, both to the court and some reporters, emerged, and its subject line was, "Hidden Assets in Vegas." In it, purportedly penned by an insider to the Browns, the author described the way Kody and Robyn had secretly invested money in real estate in Las Vegas in their last few years there. The author asserted that these assets were never reported in divorce proceedings or in financial reports. The hook: from the email, those Vegas properties were purchased with money siphoned from TLC profits, the very same money Meri, Christine, and Janelle were supposed to share. Court investigators quickly jumped in. Subpoenas were sent out to banks, real estate offices, and even contractors who had done remodeling for the Browns in Nevada. Within days, receipts started coming back, indicating transactions that seemed unnervingly like the secret account the judge had previously identified. Fans went wild online. Reddit forums blew up with rumors, with one reader writing, "So while Meri rented, Christine fought medical bills, and Janelle fought to save Coyote Pass. Kody and Robyn were out purchasing Vegas real estate unreal." For Meri, the Vegas leak was vindication on a huge scale. Her lawyer now had evidence that Kody hadn't merely skimped on her. He'd possibly concealed millions. Worse for Kody, the Vegas holdings weren't abstract. They were tangible assets with real worth: houses, property, and rental properties that could now be attached or sold by court order. Robyn allegedly cried when she heard the news. Someone close to the family said she screamed, "This was supposed to be our safety net. They can't take this away from us, but they could." And the court was about to rule whether they would. The Vegas surprise reshaped everything. What had begun as a struggle over one hidden account now seemed like a years-long history of money misbehavior. For years, followers had guessed Kody was keeping more than he disclosed. Now, it was coming out in chunks, and Meri's stance just became more solid. As one of the commenters on YouTube said, "Meri doesn't need to say a word. Kody and Robyn are digging their own graves, and the court is just providing them with the shovels." But the Vegas leak wasn't the coup de grace face. The actual shock came when investigators linked those secret assets to something much more sinister: unpaid taxes and liens that could trigger criminal charges. The Vegas leak was incendiary, but the actual bombshell came when investigators cross-checked those secret properties with state and federal tax rolls. What they discovered shocked everyone: hidden property taxes, inconsistencies in reported income, and even quietly filed liens against Kody and Robyn's names. In simple terms, it wasn't just about money being kept secret from Meri, Christine, and Janelle anymore. It was about money being kept secret from the IRS. The judge didn't dilly-dally. A separate inquiry was opened, and suddenly Kody wasn't just facing restitution or sanctions. He was staring down the possibility of criminal charges: fraud, tax evasion, concealment of assets. Words that could mean more than fines. They could mean prison. When the news hit the courtroom, Robyn reportedly broke down, whispering over and over, "This wasn't supposed to go this far." But it had. Meri, once again, remained calm. For years, she had been typecast as the quiet one, left behind wife. Now, she was sitting back and watching a storm that she didn't even spark, reducing the very empire that had attempted to bench her to a fraction of its former size. Her property value skyrocketed as sympathy flooded in, and with each new revelation, Kody's credibility took a deeper dive. Fans online were relentless. One trending Reddit post read, "Kody went from family patriarch to possible felon in less than a season." And YouTube commenters were close behind. Excerpts from the court hearing went viral, thumbnails screaming, "Kody faces prison, and the IRS comes for the Browns." Behind the scenes, sources indicated Kody became paranoid. He allegedly insisted his lawyers guarantee him that "they can't put me in jail over this." But the reality, they could. For Robyn, the horror intensified. Her name was on some of the Vegas properties, meaning she wasn't a bystander. She was an owner. If prosecutors believed she knew about the scheme, she could also be brought up on charges. Meanwhile, Meri's lawyer made the most of the opportunity. In an incendiary court document, they stated, "It is not merely a matter of spousal fairness. It is now a legal accountability issue. Mr. Brown has not only swindled his wives, he might have swindled the public itself." The force of those words hung around long after the document dropped into the record. For viewers, it was confirmation of what they had long suspected. Kody's empire wasn't just falling apart, it was decayed from the inside. But the ultimate twist came when the IRS itself confirmed that they were rearviewing the matter. That one sentence sent shockwaves through the sister wives universe. For Meri, the timing was beautiful. Her property, once undervalued and neglected, now symbolized stability and legitimacy. For Kody, the timing was disastrous. His finances, which had long been undisclosed and inaccessible, were now subject to scrutiny at the highest levels, and as the next hearing drew near, everyone wondered the same thing: would this be a financial penalty, or would Kody Brown really see time behind bars? The courtroom was filled to the brim, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Cameras rolled live, hashtags were trending, and the world waited for one question to be answered. What would become of Kody and Robyn? The judge's gavel finally dropped. The room was silent. Then the verdict: Mr. Brown, you are ordered to pay back every cent of money stolen from your wives. Failure to do so will lead to additional legal consequences, including criminal prosecution and seizure of assets. The courtroom erupted. Meri's face was a mixture of vindication and relief. Decades of being ignored, underestimated, and pushed aside had led up to this moment of victory. Christine and Janelle gripped her hands, crying, each murmuring congratulations. Kody felt the humiliation to be beyond measure. Robyn's tearful faces didn't serve to soften it. Their kingdom of deceit, built up over years with such care, was in tatters. Banks froze accounts, lawyers scrambled, and property liens were immediately enforced. Every luxury, every secret account, every hidden transaction, exposed and accounted for. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, but Kody avoided them, escorted silently to his waiting vehicle. Undefined social media exploded with reaction videos, memes, and commentaries, and Meri's story became the top trending topic for days. Meanwhile, Meri's property value continued to climb. With the public spotlight and judicial approval, her house wasn't merely a refuge, it was a beacon of justice done. The irony was not lost on her. The very ones who attempted to manage her money, destabilize her, and conceal wealth from her were now footing the bill for their actions. Literally, online fans hailed her as a winner, with one person hailing it as a textbook example of patience, resilience, and strategy. Meri's calm throughout was such a beacon for those who had ever been underestimated or dismissed. The message from the court was unmistakable: fraud, deception, and betrayal come with costs, and those costs can change lives in striking fashion. For Kody and Robyn, the lesson was agony for all to see. For Meri, it was a milestone, a peak in property worth and personal strength, a triumph won against incredible odds. And so, as one last gavel fell, Meri left the courtroom not only a survivor, but a beacon of justice, demonstrating once and for all that when deceit confronts accountability, truth, and sometimes luck, triumphs.